you're going to be a wealth creator. First thing we want to do here is define wealth. What is wealth? And the first thing we have to understand about wealth is that it is relative to what others have. If you live in a very poor community, wealth can be just having your own car. If you live in the Hamptons, wealth is a whole lot more. So wealth is relative to what others, those around you. And I want to talk about the difference between, especially between income, wealth, and generational wealth, because your mindset has to change if you're going to create some serious wealth in the future. A lot of people think of themselves, if they had a big income, that's wealth. Well, it's not. For example, I know people who make over $1 million a year and still live paycheck to paycheck. No matter how much they have, they spend it. They want more. They don't have enough, and their income, no matter how big it gets, they never have enough. Okay, so having an income is not a marker of wealth. Also, income can stop. You can get sick. Things can happen. The income goes away. The economy changes. Things change. And putting away a nest egg from your income may make you feel more secure, but it's not wealth. So I want to dispel the notion of having a big income is somehow wealth. It's not. So what about wealth? Well, if you look at the definitions of what's called a high net worth individual, a high net worth individual by definition has $30 million of liquid capital. That's not houses, that's not businesses, that's not any of that stuff. That's in addition to that stuff, they've got 30 million of cash as a cushion for anything that comes up. If you have less than 10 million of liquid capital, you will be constantly in want of things you can't afford, because the people around you, when you have that money, will also have more, and you're going to want more, and there's going to be things that you can't have because that you need rather in order to compete with those people or be in with those people or whatever that notion is. And so the idea for most people who haven't created wealth, well, if I had $10 million, I'd be wealthy. Well, until you have 10 million, and then you won't feel very wealthy. But then there's this thing called generational wealth. And now we get into what's defined as an ultra high net worth individual, and that's an individual with 100 million of liquid capital. And the interesting difference between wealth and generational wealth, you see, wealth can be lost. There are people who make fortunes, lose fortunes. They invest in this, they lose it in that. If you can lose your money, you don't have generational wealth. You have wealth, but you can lose it. Generational wealth can't be lost. It's when you've got billions and literally so much money you can't spend it all, you can't misinvest it all. Now you have generational wealth, and it takes 100 million bucks of liquid cash amongst all the other things you own, from houses to yachts to boats to whatever you own, to be in that place. What I'd like to do is to take a moment and to see if we agree on our definition of wealth. And so I'd like to get comments here as to what other people think with respect to wealth. If you have a question, you can write it in the question box on the right-hand side. If you want to make a comment, you can raise your hand and we'll turn on your microphone. But I'd like this not to be just me talking. I'd like it to be interactive to the point where you're satisfied that we're all on the same page here. We're all heading down the same track to understand what we need to, and then to get to that point where generational wealth is within our reach. So does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments that they'd like to make with respect to that? If so, just raise your hand or write it in the question box on that right side panel. I don't see any, so what we're going to do is take a moment here I'd like you to come to how much a person has. It's never enough. We want more. The want for more is built into our genetics. And it all comes down to your place in human society. That is ultimately how wealth is really defined. It's defined relative to your position, your place in human society. So we're going to take a little bit of time here, and we're going to understand how human society is constructed. We're not going to spend long here because this isn't the reason we're here today. The reason we're here today is to learn how to create wealth, multi-generational wealth. But it's important to understand its position, its status, its reason for being. What is wealth all about? So one of the things that you're going to want to do as a result of today is you're going to want to understand what your own goals are with respect to wealth creation. And before establishing your goal, let's look at the harsh reality of human history. Okay, and I'm going to divide things into just 3 or 4 categories here: survival, prospering, getting rich, and building multi-generational wealth. They're very different, but they represent stratas of society. Since the world was first created, there are bosses and there are workers. There are kings and there are serfs. And all of life is organized around who gets to spend the output of the serf. If you're in that survival mode, you're living as a serf. Now, we don't call us that today, but in the course of human history, if we're surviving, we're living as a serf. To get to that point where you prosper, where you are is you support the wealthy who own the output of the serfs, so that you're a supporter of those wealthy people. But you can still prosper in that strata. If you're going to get rich, okay, that means you're going to join the junior league of serf output owners. And if you're going to build multi-generational wealth, you're going to own the output of the serfs. That's the harsh reality of the structure of human society, but that's where you have to determine your place in that social strata, because everything you want in life is already owned out there by somebody. It's already part of the structure, and you're going to have to decide at what level you want to participate in human society. And part of that is determining for yourself at what level will you find true happiness. My suggestion is finding happiness in the journey itself, doing what you love. That's part of it. And it's one of the reasons I happen to love being in business, because I love business and I love the things that I do. So whatever level I achieve in the strata of human society, I'm having fun and I'm happy all the way. And I think that needs to be part of everyone's goal structure, is don't set your goal so that when you spend 50 years doing it, you'll finally be happy, but you're going to be miserable all the way getting there. Okay, wealth creation in its end form is an end result, but it's a journey on how you're going to get there. Again, I'd like to just take a moment to see if anybody has any questions or comments about where we are so far, because this mindset that we're going through today is really important for you to determine for yourself the true level of wealth creation that you want to achieve for yourself and your family. So again, if we can take a look at that, see if there's any questions up there, comments. There's a hand raised, so I'm going to call on, pardon me for a second here, Sung Jun. I'm going to turn your microphone on. Yeah, Sung, can you give us your thoughts?
Hey, can you hear me, Gordon?
Yes, I can.
Yes, okay. I kind of stuck at the airport because,
You have
but
a slight echo in your voice,
yeah.
Sung, so I don't know if you can speak closer to your mic.
Okay, okay. Can you hear me now?
Better, much better.
Yeah, okay. So you said where is the journey, but the journey sometimes the hardship will come. I mean, you've been reached this point of the wealth, so sometimes it's difficult time. maybe it's you are enjoying at the moment, but do you have any obstacle going to get there to journey?
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's
absolutely, son. Absolutely. There are always obstacles. And part of the journey is how you overcome those obstacles. And how you overcome those obstacles is a function of your knowledge, tools, and experience. And I'm going to cover all of those with you before the end of our time together today, so that you see how you make a good you make a good fun time out of the journey by mastering the tools and the knowledge and the resources that you need to get there. Every challenge you would face in the wealth creation process is overcomable, and it's overcomable strictly with knowledge. And I'm going to give you a lot of that knowledge right here today. So again, I want to thank you for that comment, and thank you for that opportunity for me to expand upon that for again a moment.
thank you, Gordon. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
thank you.
we are here for. I'm here for. Yeah, yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm going to call on Joe Joseph. So hold on, Joseph. Yeah, Joseph. Any thoughts or comments? Really? Any thoughts or comments? Oh, I got to open your mic. Sorry. Okay, you're on self mute right now. So can you unmute yourself?
Hello. Can
Yeah.
you hear
Hi.
me? Hi, Gordon. Yeah, I think just to on the last comment from the caller, I think to shorten the journey is what we are doing. You have done this thing for more than 50 years. And I think a journey that might last you for 10 years, if you find somebody that has done it, it can shorten it to 2 years. And I think that's what we are doing. I just want to add to what the last caller said.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think I think is like leveraging on somebody that's gotten experience. It shortens the journey than
Yeah.
you doing it on your own.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that insight, Joseph. And what I'm going to do in an example that I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to show you chapter and verse how I took literally 5 years to create what for most people would be a fortune. Right. And that if I stopped right there, I would never have to do anything more in life and live very, very well. Very well. I'll show you that before we get done. And thank you for the comment. Okay, so let me sort of move on here. Um, there are two top sources of building wealth. 90% of the wealth that's been built in this country has been built in two areas. Okay, one is real estate, and the other one is in business. And real estate, if you look at real estate, it's great opportunities there. Most strategies are transactional, though, creating income. They do inure to wealth over a period of time, but only the top 0.5%, half of 1%, create what we just defined as wealth. The rest struggle, with only a handful making a great living. Real estate isn't a universal solution to the problem. It also has other issues. It's location based. Locations rise and fall, and you cannot move the property. So if the neighborhood goes bad, you're stuck with it, or you have to sell it, and you'll sell it not with the profits you're looking for. Economic conditions rise and fall, and it's difficult to change the business model of property without large investment. So if it's the neighborhood changes and you've got to recondition the building, well, a very expensive proposition to do that. Businesses, on the other hand, are flexible. And more important, they are adaptable to technology. Technology today is revolutionizing the profitability of business. And by taking older businesses that haven't put in or adopted that technology, there are huge profit opportunities there. Businesses are movable. You can relocate to another state, a la Elon Musk, who realizes that having his business in California was not a good idea, and he moved it to Texas. Well, if he owned property here, and that was the way he was creating his wealth, I'm sorry, he'd be stuck with California. So you don't have that problem in business, and it's highly leverageable with human capital. When you own property, the property itself defines its own wealth creating capability. when you're building a business and you're adding human capital, you're growing that business and you're putting people to work who are there working for their benefit, but in the process of doing that, that effort inures to your benefit. You have tremendous leverage in your ability to grow and create wealth. Now, there's another area where some people say that these are areas of wealth creation, and that's in the area of security, stocks, bonds, and investment. But it's not the people who invest so much that make the money. It's the owners of the security firms that build the real wealth. And everyone else just earns income. Or if you're in the top 2% of that group, yes, you can build wealth. But everyone else remains an income earner and little else. And I think it's important to get that concept, because when you're the owner of the securities business, you're in business, okay? And again, it's where in business where all of the wealth is created. A business is the vehicle through which you can create wealth by leveraging yourself through other people. It's the best vehicle possible for doing that. And to understand, to improve your understanding of businesses, how they work, how they can be acquired, what assets they have that you can leverage into the purchase of the business itself, how you can leverage the income of the business to pay for the money you borrow to go buy it, how you can use the profits and cash flow of the business that you're buying to allocate portions of that to investors who will put up all the money to further leverage the business. So it's all about leverage. It's all about understanding financial leverage. And once you have a knowledge of that, you can not only build wealth, but you can build it very quickly. I was going to take a minute here to maybe open it up for some comments, but I want to get really onto this next one, because I want to move on to where we can start to show you how these things actually happen. But there's an important part of business, okay? I think hopefully we've established that business is the best vehicle for creating meaningful wealth and doing it relatively quickly. You buy a building, you're going to have to wait 3 to 5 to 7 years. Your early years, usually you'll have negative cash flow. When you buy the building, you don't have positive cash flow right away. But then as you raise rents over a period of years, you turn the cash flow around, and eventually you start building equity in the building, and it takes time. Okay, businesses can be almost instantly made more successful. And we're going to share with you some strategies today for exactly how you can take a business that you've bought, spend almost nothing in transforming it other than changing its business model slightly. And then from there, very quickly have a business that's worth way more than what you paid for it, bringing in income that is being produced that is way more than the business that you purchased. But let me take a look at let's take a look together at another aspect of this. Okay, we talked about businesses being the best vehicle, but there are two ways that you can get yourself into a business. And one of them, which is the worst way, is to start the business from scratch. Why? Because you got a couple of years of just planning it in order to do it correctly. So to even be able to start, you got to plan it. A lot of work and effort and energy goes into that. Then you're going to have a period of negative cash flow after it starts. And it takes your hard-earned and saved money. No one else gives you credit. So you've got to put money in for several years until it finally turns the corner, and then it starts supporting you if everything's gone right. Okay, but then you probably don't have a very big business because it took a while to even get to this phase that it's in, and it's going to take you, if you're growing internally at 10, 15, 20% per year even, it's going to take you many years to get to where it's really has the value and the earning power that you need. Well, what's the best way to get into business? Well, the best way is to buy someone else's already profitable cash flowing business, because now it's up, it's running, it's past its high risk stage. It has enough cash flow and assets in it that if you understand how to orchestrate those elements you can attract the resources you need to buy the business without you having to have the cash to do it. A business can be bought using financial leverage. The business has assets and cash flow and profit that you can leverage. You can attract with that cash flow investors and lenders who want to support your purchase of the business. Why? Because they're going to make money out of it. And your job as an entrepreneur is to show them how to do that, how you're going to set it up so that they can do that. And you can do it with little or none of your own cash. You can do it with knowledge and knowledge alone. That's how I bought my first company. And I'm going to show you in a minute exactly how I did it. Another thing that's going to be important for you to actually do this is to adjust how you see yourself. How you see yourself matters. Okay, definition of an entrepreneur. This is my definition of an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a person with a vision who orchestrates the time, talent, and resources of other people to make their vision real. You're not an investor. You're going to orchestrate the resources of investors. You're not a lender. You're going to orchestrate the resources of lenders. You are not maybe even a management person, okay, who knows how to run a business well. So you're going to orchestrate the time and talent of other people who know how to do that with a proven track record to do it for you. Okay, so everything that you want is already out there. And it already exists, and there's a fundamental law of human exchange. And the fundamental law of human exchange is people are or have everything you want, and they will give it to you if you give them what they want. It's the basic fundamental law of human exchange. And all you need, besides being the entrepreneur and understanding who you are and how you're going to do what you're going to do, which is to leverage yourself through other people, how you understand how you're going to give value to other people when they give you what you want from them, the resources, the time, the talent, is you need an enabling structure. Okay, you can't do it in thin air. Okay, you got to do this within an enabling structure. And a business is the perfect structure for giving its stakeholders everything they want. It enables you to fraction out and differentiate all the elements that go into that business and apportion them to people who do for you or give you what you want. And that's true of your customers, it's true of your suppliers, it's true of your investors, it's true of your lenders, it's true of everyone. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you through an example of how I buy businesses, how I use financial leverage to do that. So remember, it's not about having the cash, because when I bought my first company, I didn't have any cash. In fact, I was in debt. Okay, I had a wife, she was ill. We had all of our money had gone out in medical bills, and we were living not even paycheck to paycheck because the paychecks weren't covering everything. But it is all about having the knowledge. And I'm going to share with you how I got that knowledge and what that knowledge is. But it comes down to, it's all about knowing how to leverage the business assets and cash flow. It's about knowing how to create wins for those people whose resources you need. And when you have the knowledge, you are in control. And that knowledge is the one thing, good times or bad times, that no one and nothing can take away from you. Because when you have that knowledge, that is the real wealth. That is the real generator of the wealth that you'll need in good times or bad times. Lose it or make it again. When you have that knowledge, you are in control of your absolute future. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a business that I bought. It was a motorcycle parts business. I was a young guy, just a few years out of school. A buddy of mine and I found this company that we thought was interesting. I rode motorcycles as part of the things that I enjoyed to do. And so when my friend came to me and said that the company that he worked for, which manufactured a single part for motorcycles, and he said the company was for sale, well, we kind of thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could buy the company? So we actually decided we'd try to do that. We didn't think about we didn't have the money. We didn't think about any of that. We just thought about wouldn't it be cool if we could do it. Well, anyway, my buddy set up an appointment for us to go meet the owner of the company. We met him. He introduced me as his partner, who was interested in buying the business. We had a great talk with the seller. Seller showed us around the facility. I was really intrigued because I'd never been in a manufacturing facility before where they made parts for motorcycles or anything for that matter. So it was all new to me. And when we were all finished, we came back into the seller's office and we asked him how much money he wanted for the company. Well, his answer was, and this is in 71 or 72. So got to translate these dollars back there. They're about 10 times since then. So he said he wanted $500,000 for the company. And to a young guy just out of college, that was a telephone number, not a purchase price. So we thanked him for his time. And my friend and I go to leave. And I turned just as we're leaving his office. And I said to him, I said, I'd like to think about all of the information you shared with me about the business. He had shared, financial information, how much the company earned, the value of the assets. He showed us balance sheets and profit and loss statements, so we would know what it is that the company is doing. But in any way, I didn't really understand all that stuff at that time, but I did understand the fact that I really would like to buy this business. But I knew I didn't have $500,000 in cash. And so I said to him, I'd like to think about the information that you shared with us today. And I'd like to be able to get back to you in a week or two with a proposal to buy the company. And his answer was, well, that would be great. Take your time, figure it out. And when you know exactly how it is that you'd like to do that or propose to do that, please get back to me. Well, my friend and I left, and my friend, as we walked out the door, was quite relieved. And he says, whoa. He says, did you hear how much money he wants for that company? $500,000. Where are two guys like us going to get that kind of money? We don't have that kind of money. Gordon, you want to go ahead and give him a proposal, you go ahead. As for me, I'm out. Well, my friend dropped out, and he never became anything more than a worker in life. I decided I was going to buy this business. I didn't know how yet, but I was determined that I was going to find a way. Well, as I started to research how it is that businesses work and how it is that you can get loans for businesses, I came upon this type of lender, which is called an asset-based lender. Now, banks do asset-based lending, but that's not their strength. They're what are called cash flow lenders. And there, you got to show them where there's cash flow that's going to pay off that loan. And that's the only way they're going to make you the loan. And you got to show them you have great credit. An asset-based lender is more like a finance company. And anyone who's ever bought a car knows what an asset-based loan is. You use the car as collateral for the loan. You're going to make payments over time. And if the payments aren't made, the lender will foreclose on the car, take it and sell it, get at least most of their money back. And that's what protects them on the loan. Well, an asset-based lender in business is very similar. Okay, what they do is they'll loan you on machinery and equipment. They'll loan you against inventory. They'll loan you against the value of your accounts receivable. There's even lenders today that will loan you against your intellectual property. I'm not going to get into that today because that's not what I used to buy the company back then. But in any event, these asset-based lenders, all they care about is that if they had to, they could liquidate the assets for more money than they loan to you. So they will loan you 65% of the accounts receivable, maybe even as high as 80%. They will loan you 50 to 65% of the value of your inventory. They will loan you up to 80% on your machinery and equipment. So when you take all of those assets, a very significant portion of those values can be borrowed towards the purchase of the business. Okay, so I now knew there were these things, these lenders called asset-based lenders, and once I owned the company, I could pledge those assets as collateral for the loan and raise a very substantial portion of that $500,000. But I was missing a little bit, okay? So I was gonna have to come back to the seller and ask the seller to take back a loan for a portion of that purchase price. So for example, if I could pay him, and I'm just gonna make up numbers now, $200,000 from money I could borrow, then I wanted him to take a note for the other $300,000 so that I would have the money to make the purchase on the company. And the money that I didn't have, I could take and give the seller a note for that portion of the purchase price, where I could take 5 to 7 years to pay that off. Now, how am I going to pay off all these loans? Well, I had to look at the cash flow and profits of the business and make sure that over the times that these loans had to be repaid, that there was enough cash flow coming in that it from the cash flow could make the payments on the loans. And there was, okay? So that was the first hurdle I had to overcome. Second hurdle I had to overcome was I had to come up with a couple of $100,000 down. I was going to borrow $300,000 from the seller, but I got to come up with the cash, and I don't own the business yet in order to borrow against the assets. So what's standing between me and buying the company is a couple of $100,000 of cash that I don't have. Now, once I could get that cash, then I could buy the company, then I could borrow against the assets, pay back that loan that helped me get into the company. Okay, I could pay that back, and then from the cash flow, repay all my loans and own the company. But I didn't have the 150 or to 200,000 in cash. So now I had to come up with a way that I can buy the business, own the business, before I had to come up with the down payment. And I didn't quite get there, but I came up with a way to do it, okay? And it's not by owning it before, but it was by owning it simultaneously with creating all the loans I had to create. And I did that through a tool or a vehicle called a double escrow. And the way that that worked is the seller puts his business and the title to the business into an escrow. That when he gets his down payment, the business is going to transfer to me. But I don't have the down payment money, so I take the asset-based lenders, I go to them and say, once I own this company, how much would you loan me against the equipment, against the accounts receivable, against the inventory of the business? And I came up with more than the $200,000 that they loan me once I own the business. So I sign all the documents with them as if I'm already the owner. Those documents go into a second escrow. Their $200,000 goes into that escrow. So now there's two escrows set up, one with the seller that the minute they get $200,000, I own the company, and another that says once I own the company, all these documents are then signed by the owner of the company. And what they will do is that they will then provide that down payment capital. And I structure it so that both escrows have instructions to close simultaneously, so that at the moment that the escrow closes that gives the seller his down payment money, at that same instant, the other escrow is closing, which now that I have title to the business, gives us the ability to pledge the collateral to the asset-based lenders, which then pays off the loan. This was now called a swing loan that I got from a bank to do this, okay? So a asset-based loan, a swing loan connected by a double escrow, enabled me to give the seller his down payment money from a quick loan from the bank that gets paid off the instant that it's made, and it enables me to own the business, which now has debt against the assets. But the deal is complete. I now own the business. Now, I want to add one other factor here. You're saying, well, Gordon, you must have had credit to get that swing loan. No, I didn't have credit to get the swing loan. The swing loan was from a bank. The double escrow was set up at the bank. The bank was in control of both escrows. They knew that their swing loan was going to get paid off the instant that it was made because they're holding all the money in escrow. So the bank didn't care what my credit rating was. They knew exactly how they were going to get repaid, and they were in control of the transaction for the entire time. Now, I didn't buy that business with my cash. I bought it by figuring it out with knowledge. Now, I went on to build that business from the business, a small, relatively small company that it was, because I used that exact same technique to buy up competitors, to buy up companies that produce complementary products to the line of products that I had. Until I built the business to where it was 5 to 6 times the size. And I did it within a couple of years. It didn't take me long to get 5 or 6 times the size. If I wanted to get 5 to 6 times the size by growing it through just reinvesting my profits every year, it would have taken me 10 to 20 to 30 years to do that. But I got to 5 to 6 times the size of the business by buying up these other companies and adding them to the company I already had. And then I finally sold it out to a public company who wanted my distribution that I had for all of my different products to back end their products that were similar to mine into my distribution system that gave them not only the value of what I had built, but the value of my distribution system, which made their company worth more money because their sales would go up once they had my distribution. So I was paid a premium for the company. And I walked away from that company after literally 4 or 5 years of building it with a fortune in my pocket that if I never wanted to work another day in my life, I didn't have to. But that wasn't enough for me. I got into my more, okay, that I wanted to do more. Plus, I had fun doing it. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the business I was in. I enjoyed the building process. I enjoyed negotiation. I enjoyed closing deals and making things happen. It was part of what I enjoyed. And so I was enjoying the journey. And for me, that wasn't my final destination, because I had enough money at that time to live anywhere I wanted, drive any car I wanted, to vacation anywhere that I wanted to go. And if that was my life and I was strictly retired, I could have lived a very nice life and never have to work another day again. And I'm a young kid. I'm still in my 20s. So the point is that what I've shared with you so far is how business does this, how it is that when you understand financial leverage and how to use these levers of leverage, how you can become a very, very wealthy person. Now, I didn't stop there. I went on to take the money that I got. Interestingly enough, I didn't invest that in other businesses. I put that away. I put it away where it was safe forever. I put it into trust for my family. I put it into places where nobody could get to me. Even if I made a big mistake elsewhere, that money was in trust. They couldn't get it. It was asset protected, and nobody could get to it. My creditors couldn't get to it. Even the government, if I ever owed the government money, couldn't get to it. So I was totally asset protected. My family was secure. We would have those incomes coming in perpetuity, and everything was great. But that isn't where I wanted to stop. I wanted to take my knowledge and build an empire, and that's what I went on to do. To get back into what we do today, when I first went into business, even before I actually developed this plan for going into business that I just described to you, I knew that I wanted to go into business at some point. I knew that I didn't know a whole lot. I knew I was a relatively capable guy. And so I made an offer to 2 of the wealthiest people of my generation, of the generation that was wealthy when I was a kid. And those two people were Howard Hughes and John Paul Getty. And I wrote both of them very long letters saying, I want to come to work for you. I'm a bright guy. Here's some entrepreneurial things I did when I was a kid. I think I could be very helpful to you. I don't want you to pay me anything. I'll work for you because I want to learn what you do and how you create wealth. And I believe that if I'm learning from you, that as a part of that process, I can contribute great value to you. And I went on to state what I thought I could do to help them. Neither of them answered my letter. But at that point in time, I made a vow to myself that if I ever got to be where they are, or even close, that what I would do is to make my knowledge available to up and coming entrepreneurs to help other people achieve high levels of entrepreneurship. And so as part of that promise to myself, I started something called Bizar Financing. And the idea, it was to train up and coming entrepreneurs in the tools and techniques and methods that, and strategies and structures that I use to create these business acquisitions and to achieve wealth. And we started that program in 1980, and it was very, very successful right out the door. And so we developed not only a training program that trains people how to do all this stuff from start to finish, from every technique that we evolved, but we also had something called an advisor line, which meant that anytime one of our people that we trained ran into a problem getting a deal done, they would call us and they would say, how do I handle this? What do I do about that? So that advisor line became a very important support resource to our people that we were training. But it did more. It did more. What happened is a lot of bright people came through our program. And even though they may have had this particular challenge, when I helped them solve that challenge, they would come back to me a week later, a month later, a year later, and they would say to me, hey, Bizar, you know that technique that you shared with me on how to get over this hurdle? They said, well, I used it and it wouldn't quite work for me, so I had to modify it. And here's how I modified it, and here's how it worked. So we were grateful, okay? We listened. You know, here's a new thought, a new idea, a proven alteration of a basic theory. And so we then published that into our program, and we would continually upgrade our program with all the new things that we were learning from our graduates of our program. So the program kept expanding with the techniques that after they were modified 3 or 4 times, they didn't look like the same technique anymore. They were a whole new concept in how you create this kind of financial leverage. And so over the years, instead of teaching the 3 to 5 basic strategies and structures that we started with, we're up to 116 or 118 different major strategies that we use for this, many of which don't look anything like what I just shared with you. They've evolved to a whole new state of the art in how these things are done. I mean, 1980 to 2024, it's a long time to build on top of building on top of building all of these elements to the level that they are today. And the advisor line is still part of our program. We still continue that. We still continue to support the people we work with and to learn the new techniques, the new institutions that are out there, how to take the new technologies and use the technologies to super leverage the concepts that we've developed. And life is always changing, and in the information age that we live in, information is always compounding better and better and better. And we're involved and integrated into that process for the benefit not only of our own purchases, which we continue to make today, but of the purchases that our students are making today. Today, we've evolved this concept, for example, of strategic aggregation. What's strategic aggregation? Well, if you're going to buy businesses, you can buy a business that's standalone and all you got is what you paid for, right? Well, you don't want to just own a business that's only worth what you paid for it, because now you got to step in and build its value. You want to have a plan, a strategy, so that the instant you buy that company, it's instantly worth more money than it was to the seller. It's instantly got more cash flow than it had for the seller. It instantly has more profit, because now That's a value add. And when you add value and you can do it instantly to the company, you have more to share with your investors, with your lenders, with your suppliers, with your employees. You have more to share with everybody. You can create a much bigger, better business, so capable of paying off the debt, so capable of giving high returns to your investors that they can't help but say yes to you when you ask them to support your acquisition. So how does strategic aggregation do that? Well, the first business I buy would have a problem, okay? And there's nothing to strategically aggregate it with on day one. But my second purchase is not going to be the same. My second purchase is going to be a business that supports in one way or another the business objectives of that particular company. So for example, let's say the first company I bought was a real estate broker, okay? And it lists commercial homes. Residential homes. All right, and it earns its money by either selling a person's home or selling a person looking for a home, somebody's home. Okay, so they put all this money into getting people to come to their brokerage firm. They invest all this money in their infrastructure to support those two activities. And when they buy or sell the home on behalf of a client, they make a commission. And then they're done. And if they're lucky, that customer will come back to them when they buy or sell a new house in 5 to 10 years. But in the meantime, they're finished. Their income's over. Well, we combine that company with our next purchase, which is not going to be another real estate brokerage firm. It's going to be an escrow company. Okay. And that escrow company is seeing home buyers and home sellers right at the time they're making the decision to buy a home. The broker's clients that sells the home, the real estate broker, they're seeing clients at the same time that they have to make a decision to put a transaction into an escrow to close. Okay, so now I'm able to take both companies, and with the acquisition of the second company, my first company is going to become worth more. Why? Because it's going to get more sales than it would have had otherwise. Okay, going to get more people who are buying or selling a house. And my escrow company is going to get more business than it did before because my brokerage firm is now going to bring the clients that they're selling, they're going to bring them to their escrow company. So that company is going to get more business from the transactions of my brokerage firm. So both companies became more valuable on the day I closed that acquisition, and both experienced an immediate increase in cash flow and profit. Now I don't stop there. Okay, what's the next thing I do? Well, what else would serve as this? Well, suppose I buy a home renovation company. Okay, well, people who renovate homes, a choice they're having to make is, do I want to renovate the house that I got, or do I want to buy a new one? And if I do, then I'm going to put this one up for sale, and then I'm going to go buy a new one. So that renovation company can supply leads to my brokerage firm. It can supply leads to my escrow company. My brokerage firm can supply leads to it. I got a client just wants to buy this house, but they don't like this part of it or that part of it. So I say to them, don't worry about it. We've got a renovation or a company that can renovate that and fix it for you, and we can set that all up right after the closing. It'll get done before you even have to move into the house. Or if I'm trying to sell the house, but it's a little run down, my broker is now telling me, okay, well, don't worry about it. We'll fix up the house with a budget of X. We can fix it up, and with that budget of X, it'll now be worth 10 times that budget more in sale value. So I'm taking each company that is seeing clients at and around the same time, engaged in essentially the same activity, and I'm able to cross-market them in ways that make each one instantly more profitable. So now I have a method to my madness. I'm not just willy-nilly buying companies. I have the ability to buy companies to add value to that company the instant that I acquire it. And as a result of that, I can get investors excited because I can show them how we're going to make a great return on this investment in the company, how it's going to be worth so much more after we bought it. Same thing with my lenders. Here's the cash flow now, which is already sufficient to amortize the debt. But when I do this to this, we can amortize that debt even quicker if you want. And your loan is more secure because there's going to be new income streams coming in the minute we own this company. So I am able to get everyone excited about my company and my purchase. So that's the nature of the kind of knowledge that we keep bringing to our people at Bizar Financing. So when we train them how to do it, we don't stop there. We support them all the way through the acquisition process, even to the point of post-acquisition. How do they continue to build up that company to make it more valuable, improve their cash flow, improve their profitability? Now, in Bizar Financing, we also looked at all of the tools that it takes to do this. So, for example, if you have to create a value on a company, you got to know if you're paying the right price for it, right? Well, there's ways to do that. So we developed this tool called the business price calculator. And we can take numbers off the financial statements of that business, off the balance sheet and off the income statement. We just put them into the computer, right? They go into a data entry spot. We just take information which is available from the seller, and we know within 5 or 10% what the realistic value of that company is. Whether no matter what industry it comes from, no matter whether it's a manufacturer, distributor, service business, doesn't matter. Business Calculator handles all of that. And so now we know if we're going to be paying a realistic price for the company. We won't waste time on a seller who's saying to us, I want, X dollars for my business, but that X dollars is half again what it's worth. And we know they're not likely to come down from that, because to them, the business has this emotional value. But we have the tools that we can show them what it's worth. We can take them and show them in the marketplace what it's worth. And it eliminates a lot of the debate, a lot of the arguments, and it gets us right quickly into the value of the business. We have another tool called a doable deal analyzer, where we put those same data into the doable deal analyzer. But now it tells us, now we know the purchase price, it tells us where the money can come from, all 146 different types of sources that it can come from. It gives us the cost for each source of that. It gives us what our cash flow will be when we use that source and have to make repayments. So we know how to allocate between equity that we need to get and loan that we can support the debt service of. It tells us everything we need to do it, and the tool will even take and optimize the cash needed for that purchase. And the shock is that when we finish that tool, we find that there's usually 110 to 130% of the purchase price that we can raise in the purchase of that company. Sounds crazy, but it can be done. And so we end up with enough cash at close that not only are we handling all of the debt service, not only are we handling returns for investors, not only are we buying a business that's now going to be worth more, but what we're able to do is to actually pull cash out of the closing. So not only didn't we put up any of our own cash, but we end up with more cash when the deal closes than is needed for the purchase. And so we can keep it as working capital in the company, which I do a lot of the time because I want to build it and I want it to grow. But there are times when we'll pull it out too, and it's buying the new car, or it's buying the new home, or it's buying the yacht, or it's doing whatever personal use we want to put it to. But both are possible when you have the deal structured properly and you have all the information. So the programs that we have that support our members that we have in Bizar Financing is from the very elementary purchasing to what we call Bizar Financing Pro, which is the full range of every piece of information we know is included in that program. We have the advisory support. We have the where we'll actually advise. But then we have another program called PIBA Gold. PIBA stands for Partners in Business Acquisition, where we'll partner up with our graduates and either we'll be their partner in buying the company, and we'll supply any of the missing ingredients. So if they don't know how to finance the company, we'll get it financed. If they don't know how to if they don't know how to negotiate the deal, we'll negotiate the deal. If they don't know how to structure it because math isn't their thing, and so they were able to create a great relationship with the seller. The seller wants to sell to them, but they don't know how to structure and negotiate the deal. Well, we'll handle that for them. And that's called Partners in Business Acquisition. And then we go one step further. And we have another program called Partners in Business PIBA Gold. And that's a done for you service. And in that service, we just spend time with our member. They don't want to know all the details of how to do all this stuff. They just want to get it done. And so we have a commitment fee that we do charge for that service because we want to know they're committed to the result. But we spend time with them to identify the criteria for the right company for them to own, one that fits their background, fits their experience, fits their enjoyment or passion, if you will, so that they can really enjoy the operation of the business. And then we handle, after we have the criteria, where we've agreed upon with them on the criteria, they don't have to do anything more. They can participate if they want, but they don't have to. We literally handle everything else that has to get done. We find the business, we check it against the criteria. We do the due diligence on the company to make sure that what we're seeing is actually true about the company. We handle the structuring of the deal. We handle getting the financing. We handle the closing. We handle everything and turn the business over to that PIBA member or our PIBA partner. Now, we're going to be their partner. We're going to have a part interest in the company too, as a part of our reward for all the work that we did to make it happen. But we're going to be their driver in that process. And we will look to how do we strategically aggregate it. So it's not like, well, we're just going to buy the company and that's the end of it. We know how to buy a company, right? We know how to create that value added that makes the company worth more. So the goal of the entire process is to take that company and make it a more valuable company than the one that was purchased. So all in all, those are the things that we do. Now, in our PIBA Gold program, that has been so successful that right now we have a waiting list for that. We don't have the internal talent to handle more than we're handling now. And so we had to create a waiting list for that. But it's a great program, and we're thrilled to be able to do that with people who just know they want to get into a business and haven't had the personal success in doing it. Because we have people in our program, they've taken every business buying course on planet Earth from all of the gurus out there who advise and train people how to do it, but they always get to the same spot, which is they get into negotiation and they can't get it financed. They get everybody wanting to say yes. They've learned how to write a letter of intent. They've learned how to value a company. They've learned how to negotiate a deal, and everything gets done. They got everything signed except the money. And we find that that's our most valuable add to that process is knowing that we can get it financed. And then we see a lot of people who don't want to even know all that stuff. They just want to write the commitment check, the commitment fee, and then just own a business. They don't want to do all the rest. They just want to own it and run it. Now, a lot of the times people say, well, I want to run the business. We try and talk them out of that. Why? Because unless this is a business that they have an incredible track record in themselves, we only go after businesses in PIBA that have a management team in place with a track record of running the business profitably. And the reason for that is if you're buying a seller-owned business and the seller is instrumental in the running of the company, that is not a company you want to buy. And the reason for that is the results you're seeing that are producing all those profits, the chances are it's the talent and ability and experience of the seller that's making it happen. And when you go in and replace them and you don't have those same attributes, the chances of the business being as successful for you are frankly very, very slim. So we like to look at a business as a functioning entity of provable past results and probable future results, so that when we buy it, we know exactly what we can expect. Now, there's nothing that would stop me or any of our other buyers from taking an interest in the company, working with the top management to discuss ideas and thoughts, expansion possibilities, and bringing the talent of the buyer to interact and optimize the experience and results of the existing management team. That's smart to do that. But to replace the management is not a good idea. Okay, if you have to replace management, don't buy the business. And the reason is because management is the result of a harmoniously operating team of people who trust and respect each other and who feed off of each other to optimize their own capabilities. And you disrupt that management team, you will not have the same company that you bought. If the owner isn't going to stay on, so we buy a lot of businesses where the owner is key, but they'll stay on for 5 years after the purchase, and is a part of giving them incentive to do that. We allow them to continue to own 20% of the company. And so we'll buy 80% of the company in effect. We'll allow them to own 20%. We'll bring our value added strategies to the company. We'll show the seller where his 20% is a second bite at the apple that's going to enable him to sell that 20% probably back to us in 5 years for more money than we paid him for his 80% in the upfront purchase. And so we have an excited seller who's going to get to benefit from our capabilities. We've got a management team that's going to stay in place. We have a long enough transition period that the seller is there to upscale or upgrade one of those management people, or bring in a new management person who over time can integrate into the management team of the company, so that the outcome of that transition in management is more assured to be good. So we've thought these things all the way through, every single feature and factor of what it takes to make a successful acquisition. But why is this all valuable to you? This is valuable to you because you don't have to invent it for yourself. You can have it all available to you literally tomorrow. Within 3 to 5 months, you will be doing this, not thinking about it or contemplating it. You will have the top resources on the planet at your disposal. You will have all the knowledge and capabilities for how do you do this without big amounts of capital of your own. You will have all the knowledge that assures you that the outcome of your acquisition will be successful, and that even if you've been buying multiple companies, we'll still be with you. Because one of the challenges you have when you buy other companies and you integrate them into the one that you already have is there's often a potential culture clash between the two companies that you bought. And I'll give you an example. Okay, one company is profit driven. Man, they're driven for the bottom line. Don't give a damn about the client, the customer, or customer service. They just want the money. And your other company is one where you've recognized that long-term service of your client is the ultimate end to profitability, and over time produces far and away the biggest profits, because your clients become raving fans. They bring in their friends. You're able to expand the company faster. You don't have as many complaints to deal with, so that cost goes away. You don't have service issues, so that cost goes away. In other words, all the things that the fast buck makers want to do cost you money in the long run. So if you're building a company, customer service is everything. It's going to enable you to build it with lower cost in the end. So we're able to anticipate these culture clashes to make sure that the company you're buying is also one whose culture is symbiotic with yours, that will function in support of the company that you already have. And when you integrate the functions of the two companies, everything will harmonize because they're already on the same frequency. So those are the kind of things that we bring to the party. And acquisition, while it's the greatest way to build wealth fast, it's also perhaps the most complex. You got a lot of moving parts to create a successful acquisition. And so if you can do it with the assistance or the done for you side of what we do, it can make a huge difference in your ability to do it and to do it quickly. Now let's talk about time, because a lot of folks are here, as we learned in the beginning of our conversation, where we had some feedback from our people that are online with us, is that people want to know that there's a timeline to wealth that is short and can create the level that they want relatively quickly, and that it's all about retiring early and living the life that they envision for themselves, where they own a business fully capable of supporting that lifestyle and continuing to grow to support their lifestyle as their lifestyle expands. And the methodology that we will be training you in, and that we will be sharing with you and supporting with you, is one where you should be looking for a 3 to 5 year timeline to build such a company. Okay, you're going to buy one, then within 6 months, you're going to buy another one. And then within 6 months of that, you're going to buy another one. And the ones are going to keep getting bigger and more profitable than the ones you bought the first time. And by the time you're out 5 years from now, you have a company that can do one of two things. It's either going to be positioned to go public and really make you a fortune, or it's going to be positioned in such a way where it's professionally managed. You don't have to spend a day in there more than you want to in the actual running of the business, and it's going to support the lifestyle that you've been dreaming should be yours. And so those are the ways that you can look at this. You can't do that in real estate. You can't do that in securities. You can't do that in any other form of wealth building. You can only do it in businesses, because when you buy businesses, you're buying income machines wholesale, okay? You're not buying the pieces that make a business profitable. You're buying the businesses that already own all that stuff that are profitable. And so you're doing it wholesale instead of retail. And you're doing it with the best practices and the best strategies and structures and advice on the planet for getting it done. And there's no place else that you can go where you can get this kind of knowledge, training, support, and even getting it done for you that we can do for you here. So let me take this opportunity to take a few questions. And I see a couple of questions there that are typed into the question sheet there on the side. So let me see what they say here. Oh, can't hear. Well, hopefully that problem got solved. Audio test. Can you hear me? Yeah, that was going no. Okay, now. so early in this program, we got past all of that. That's good. But I don't see any other questions here. So does anybody have any questions? You can either raise your hand or just fill information in the question box on the side. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And if you don't come up with a question or two, I'll come up with one or two that I'll ask for you. All right, I just am opening the microphone on Sung. Sung, can you hear me?
Okay. Golden, can you hear me?
I
Okay.
can.
Yeah, okay. So have you done this kind of a course or anything in the other country?
Yes, and not only
Especially,
yes,
eh? Okay.
but heck yes. We have our program actively working in every English-speaking country in the world. So if it's part of the British Commonwealth, of nations, we have all of our programs there. And in fact, I'm going to give you a quick story of one of these that we did in England, in London. So you'll get to see that they work everywhere. One of our members was interested in buying nursing homes, and he found a seller who owned 11 nursing homes. No, I'm sorry, 7 nursing homes that he could buy for 11.5 million pounds. All right, I'm not going to talk in pounds. I'm going to talk as if they were dollars because I don't want to drive people crazy trying to translate the numbers. It's the concept that's important. All right. So anyway, what he did is he did that. Now, among the advice that he followed, there's a way to position yourself to buy a company and have complete credibility with investors, with lenders, with the seller. And the way you do that is you form a new entity and call it your special purpose entity, and you create that as your buying company. Now, on the day you created it, remember, it's just a shell. It has no assets, but you're going to build a visualization of that company that when people see you as a buyer, they're going to see certain things about you that spell professionalism, that spell capability, that spell capacity to deliver. So part of that is you're going to recruit yourself a board of directors for that company. Now, how does he do that? Well, he goes on LinkedIn and he tells about his company. And he says he's looking for people to be on his board of directors who have a great deal of experience and track record in the home nursing business, nursing home business. Well, he gets 5, 6, 7, 8 replies. A couple of them have run big home nursing companies. They're retired. They're not doing anything right now, but they've got all the experience, all the credentials, because they've already run companies of that size. So he hires one of them to be on his board of directors, but he doesn't pay him anything. He gives them a 0.5% equity that they'll get in his company, or 1% equity that they're going to get in this company when the deal closes, and that's all they need. And they're going to, at that point, hire them and pay them a certain amount of money to oversee the management that will already be there. Okay? So now when he goes to apply for a loan, when he goes out to ask for investors, well, who are you? Well, we're the ABC company, which is named like it's a home nursing company. It's like, well, this is what our board looks like. So they have this person on the board. This is the person who knows how to run the company. So you now are starting to build a picture of capacity to deliver. All right. So now the next thing he does is he goes out and he hires a lawyer and he hires an accounting firm. And the accounting firm he hires is a fairly large accounting firm, highly prestigious, that agrees to be his accounting firm and charges him a stipend retainer, with the understanding that when he finds the company he wants to acquire, he will increase that to comply with their normal fee rates. But now when he goes to the lenders and the investors, who's your accounting firm? Well, it's this prestigious accounting firm. He does the same thing with a lawyer, okay? And he gets everyone to defer the large portions of their billing forward. The next thing he does, once he finds his company, he does a pro forma on the company, showing what it's going to earn when he owns it, showing what it's going to take to buy it, showing what the cash flows are going to look like. All of that, he uses our doable deal analyzer to do all that. Okay, so now he's got a complete picture for an investor and a lender of how the deal's going to work and how everybody's going to get repaid and how everybody's going to earn a return on investment. And he's got this great accounting firm, he's got this great lawyer, and he's got the guy who knows how to run the company, proven track record. So he's developing this capacity to deliver, and he hasn't spent a lot of money yet. In fact, practically none. Okay. So what's the first one he goes after? He goes after his first investor, whose first investor is not the ultimate investor. It's the guy who's going to put up the meaningless amount of money that he needs at the beginning, so that he's got money for the little amounts he has to pay these people. All right, and what does he show them? He shows them all this stuff, including the pro forma. He explains to them if he puts up this little bit amount of money, that he will give them 2% of the company. This will give him a return based on the pro forma of X. And when they get the deal funded, He doesn't have to wait until the business is successful to get his money back. They'll repay his money as soon as the deal closes, so that that money comes back to him right away. So he doesn't take this long-term risk with his money. He takes the short-term risk that this deal is just going to close. Even if the business wasn't successful, he's going to get his money back. So the net result of that, he gets his first investor. So now the company's got a little cash in it to actually pay these folks. And then based on all of this, he now goes out and looks for his major investors and his major lenders. Well, he finds all the lenders, but he isn't able to find the investors. But what he does do, he works with the seller to have a higher price on the business than the seller really is asking and wanting for the business when it's sold. So he created this wedge between what the seller really wants and the value of the company that was consistent with the marketplace. In other words, the seller felt that if he could get all these homes sold together, that even though technically the market price would be a little higher, if he could get them all sold at the same time, he'd be willing to take less. All right, well, why is that important? Because guess what's going to happen when the escrow closes, right? The deal with the seller is going to get his purchase price, but a portion of that's going to, in a second escrow, come back to the buyer, in putting into his pocket money up front that they can use for working capital to build a business, or they can use it as as money for in the seller's pocket and in the buyer's pocket to do what he wants. Okay, so that is how that deal got constructed. Now, when that got all done, this happens sometimes, doesn't happen often. But when that got all done, he and the seller got so close and got to like each other, trust each other, and respect each other so much during this process of putting the whole deal together, that the seller literally turned to him and said, you know, why go out and get all these investors and lenders? I'll finance the whole deal for you. You know, here, you just give me a note for it. I'll work with you. And as you're, developing your profits, you just pay off on the note. Now that is rare. Okay, but that's what happened in this particular case. Now, the reason, again, that I'm sharing these with you is, number one, that happened in the UK, that we have deals like that happen in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, any place where the British were good enough to build their colonies is built on common law. And all of these techniques work, and it's consistent with their laws, consistent with everything going on. We have people who have done this with us in South Africa, and anywhere they speak English. Now, we're eventually going to get our stuff translated into Spanish, because we find we have people who have done this in Argentina, where the language is not English. So we've been getting for years people who do this in non-English speaking countries. But our main group are people that are within the United States, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. Those are our biggest membership bases. Okay, it looks like we got some more questions here, so let me see if I can get them read. How do you find a business to buy? Great question, great question. Well, in PIBA Gold, we solved that problem by having a team of people. That's all they do, is search for businesses. One of the most dynamic sources are business brokers. There are brokers that are online. You can find them by just Googling business brokers. There are what are called investment bankers who will work the buy side or the sell side. In other words, there are buy side brokers and investment bankers, and there are sell side brokers and investment bankers. And obviously you want the ones that are sell side, because they have businesses that they represent that they want to sell. It's not normally a quick process, because you're going to shop against the criteria. You don't just want to walk into a business broker or contact a business broker and say, what do you got for sale? First of all, the next question they're going to ask you is, well, how much money do you have to put down? And the second question they're going to ask you is, what experience do you have running a business like this? So the reason they're asking you those questions is they want to pre-qualify you. They have so many people calling them that don't know what they're doing, that they work on commission. They cannot afford to spend time with tire kickers. They got to talk to the real folks. And so they're gonna want to verify you as a buyer really, really quick. And so a lot of people who use business brokers die in this process very quickly, because they're going to buy a company for $7 million, just using that as a number, could be 70 million. But then the first thing that the broker asks them is, how much money do you have to put down? And they don't know what to say. You know, well, I don't have any. Oh, I got $1 million, but I don't have 7. All right, so the question is, we solve that problem for our own buyers. We are a private equity company. We finance deals. And we will supply our members, if they have a qualified purchase, even though they don't have the money, we'll supply them with a letter from us that assures them that we, if they buy it and want us, we will supply them the capital to buy the company. So that gets them through the door, and now that question goes away. I will also tell you that if you do it right, you will never have a broker asking you that question, because the only reason they're asking you the question is because you've proven that you don't know what you're doing when you walk in there or when you access them online, and all you're saying is, I want to buy a business. On the other hand, if you've established your criteria for your business in advance, and we train our people exactly how to establish that criteria, but now I want a business in the furniture manufacturing field. I want a company that has sales of between 10 and 15 million in sales. I want it located in this particular geographical area. I want it, when I find it, to have minimum inventory of X amount of furniture, working capital of X amount of dollars. I want it to have, this amount of sales. I want it to have this amount of employees. I want it to have this large a facility, because you now know, if you've done the research, exactly what that company should look like when you find it. And we will have equipped you with another tool, which is something called RMA, Ralph Mary Alpha, RMA. Jumped out of my head, doing a Biden here. You will have what's called an e-statement study. What this company RMA does, RMA stands for Risk Management Associates. Every bank in the United States belongs to that company, belongs as a member to RMA. And what they do is they take every request they get for a loan, every request. They take the name of the company off the financial statement, and they send the financial statement to RMA. RMA takes in all of these, divides them by 6 standard industrial classification codes. So they take the codes for each one of those businesses, which clearly identifies what business it is, what kind of business it is. And then they put those statements together, they aggregate them, do a statistical analysis, and based on the company's size, determine what those financial statements ratios are. So what is the debt to equity ratio? What is the sales to equity ratio, or sales to asset ratio? In other words, all the critical ratios, and they identify all those critical ratios, and then they report those ratios back to the bank by size of company. So for all the companies under 5 million, this is what's true for them. All the companies 5 million to 10 million, this is what's true for them. All the companies 10 to 25 million, this is what's true for them, and above. And if you're the banker and you're trying to figure out whether or not you're going to loan money to a company, you get their financial statements, you know their SIC code, you pull the RMA annual statement study, and you compare the company that wants to borrow the money to what the standards are for that industry. And if the ratios for the company are better or as good as the industry, you're going to be very comfortable making the loan to that company. On the other hand, if the company does not have enough assets to support the sales, the asset to sales ratio, your chances are you're not going to make the loan because the company's going to have problems in the future, okay? If the company doesn't have enough working capital, if it doesn't have enough assets to support sales, okay, all those things are measurable. Now, why is that important to you as a business buyer? Because with an annual statement studies on a given SIC code, you can back into what the financial statement of the company you want to buy needs to look at. If you know the amount of sales of the company, you can look at the sales to asset ratio and know how much assets they have to have in the company in order to support those sales. You're going to know how much debt that company can carry comfortably. You're going to know all that stuff, okay, by backing in, knowing those ratios. So now you're sitting with a mock-up of the financial statement that meets, of the business that meets your criteria. Well, what do you know about that company? If you know the assets to debt ratio, if you know what the assets are of that company, and you know the asset to debt ratio, you'll know how much assets they have, how much of that is unencumbered, and how much more you can borrow when you are buying that company in order to cover your down payment purchase. So you can back into all the information you need to know to do it. So now when you go to your broker and you're showing him what you want to buy on your criteria, you can also tell them when you're asking them to give you companies that you can buy, you can tell them, I want a company that has this amount of assets, this amount of liabilities, et cetera, no more than this amount of liabilities. And on this company, I'm prepared to put down a down payment of $5 million. Well, how do you know you can put down $5 million? You know it because you just did the reverse statement and you know exactly what the company that meets your criteria is going to look like. And you're going to have $5 million of borrowable money in that company if they find you the right one. And if they don't find you the right one, you have the knowledge of how to sit down with them and say, you know, you found me the right company, I'd put 5 million, but on this company, I'm only putting 2. But you're totally past how much money do you have to put down? That question never comes up because you knew how to approach that business broker as a total professional. When you have the knowledge, you become powerful. There is nothing that stops you from getting done what you're trying to do. But you can't sit in ignorance and think someday I'm going to be rich, someday I'm going to have a fortune, someday I'm going to be wealthy, because that won't do it in the world we live in. This is the information age. Your mastery of how to make information work for you is what you have to be all about going forward. Investing in yourself for knowledge of how these things are done, the knowledge that can create this kind of wealth for you, is by far the most important investments you'll ever make in your life. Is investing in yourself so that you know this stuff and you know how it gets done. And so that even then, when you're asking other people to help you, you know if they're BSing you or blowing smoke at you or if they really know what they're talking about, because you know what you're talking about. Even if you're not the right person to do some of the analysis or do these things, you can at least evaluate who's real and who's not. All right, let me see if I can get another question or two here. I'm trying to get them off my screen. Okay, do you have any program that does not require a commitment fee, but where you support us with a purchase? Yes, we do. Okay, there's one that doesn't require any commitment fee. There is a training fee that's involved because it's a training program, because we got to know, you know what. In other words, we want to work with people, but at the point we work with them, they have to be knowledgeable. They can't be in ignorance and say, okay, tell me everything I got to do. It can't work that way. You got to know most of what you have to do. We can fill in the gaps. We can train you to do everything you need to know how to do. We can advise you through certain lapses of the process, but we can't take you from start to finish except in PIBA Gold, because that way you don't have to know anything. You just have to have available some resources that it takes to work the program, but after that, we handle everything. Okay, and that program I just mentioned is called Bizar Financing Pro. Is it only on the PIBA Gold that you pay a that a commitment fee is paid? Or yeah, no, we have 2 PIBAs. They're both commitment fees, but the level of support is just different. One is we'll handle anything that you can't handle within reason, and the reason is, in other words, you can't just come to us and say, I don't have to do anything, you got to handle it all. That's PIBA Gold. Okay, but on the on the standard PIBA, you would be handling most of the elements, but if there's one or two, you're just not a good negotiator. We'll handle that for you. You've got the deal, everything's been pulled together, you found the company, you did all that, but now somebody's got to really structure it so that the structure enables the deal to get done, because it can live off of the resources that are available, and the structure just has to be right. So we'll structure the deal for you. If you need us to negotiate it, we'll negotiate it for you. But if we have to start doing all the stuff, finding the money, I mean, again, we'll take bits and pieces of it, we'll do it. But if it's going to be pretty much everything, then it has to be through PIBA Gold. Okay, what type of funding? I just messed that up. Where did that go? Okay, I'm sorry about this, but they give you a very small reading box here. How do you find the business? What is the commitment fee? Do you have any program that does not require one, a fee? I mean, what program below PIBA Gold? Is it only on the PIBA Gold that you, yeah, the only commitment fees are on the two different PIBA programs. What type of funding do you use to buy businesses? Okay, great question, great question. I'm going to give you all a little bit of a finance lesson here, which will be hopefully very helpful to you. Okay, when you look at an acquisition, and you look at all the different funding that's required and used to do it, you're going to end up with what's called a which is what's called a funding stack. Okay, it's going to be a stack of all the different sources that you're using to do it. So let's take the most basic source of money is equity. Okay, so that might come from you, might come from your family, might come from a partner that you recruit to do this with you. Because remember, recruiting a partner isn't all that difficult once you know all these pieces and you can show the partner exactly how it's all going to come together, because you got a lot of partners out there who know a business, know how to run a business. They just don't know how to buy them and how to finance them. But they've got money. They have a pension or profit sharing plan that they're going to be getting when they leave their company that they're with now. So all that money is going to be available to them to put into a business. And we show you how to extract it from all of those sources, by the way, to get it available for a business. And I mean, we're going to blow your mind with all the ways there are to get money. But anyway, so you got a partner, you can put up equity money. You've got, and I don't recommend this, but you go to a private equity company and they're going to want control, but they'll put up equity money and they'll allow you to have a minority position. But that, I don't recommend that if you want to really own the business and control it. So anyway, the sources of money, number one, base of your financial stack is equity. Next one up from that is your secured lender. Okay, that's your bank. They want not only the cash flow from your company to repay the loan, but they're also going to want to know that there's collateral there, and they want to be secured for their loan. So the bottom of that stack is the bank, and they're mostly a cash flow lender, but they'll want collateral there. But it's bank financing, they're secured lenders. And then on top of them is you have asset-based lenders who are asset lenders. They lend on the strength of the collateral, but they're not as concerned about cash flow. That's your problem, because they're going to collect their money one way or another. They have to foreclose, they're happy to do it. They don't want to do it, but they're happy if they have to. All right, so now you got equity, you got secured debt, you got super secured debt, right? This is where the whole thing is about the security. All right, on top of that, you have something that you can refer to as mezzanine lending or mezzanine loan. These are folks who charge a lot more than those other guys for the money. So if you could borrow from the bank at 7 to 10%, your mezzanine loan might be 12 to 18% money. Okay, but they don't get collateral. They don't even get a personal guarantee. Okay, if you're getting a small mezzanine loan, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, they might ask you for a personal guarantee. But believe it or not, if you're getting 10, 20, 30 million, They don't ask you for a personal guarantee. They're looking at the deal as the sole source of the repayment of that money. So that's really good. Okay, if you're going to be doing bigger deals, it's a reason to do bigger deals, because you're going to be less exposed on risk, and you're going to have cheaper money because everybody's going to want to be loaning and investing money in your company. The bigger the deal, the easier it's going to be to raise great money for the purchase of the business. So you have your mezzanine loan. Mezzanine loans are very flexible. The folks who provide those, they don't. They'll structure your cash flow so that it works for you. So, for example, if you're making the purchase and you're dependent upon growing the business a little bit before its cash flow will fully amortize the debt service, they'll structure their loan for their portion of the funding. They'll structure it so that you don't make any payments during the first 2 months. Then during the next 4 months, it's interest only. Then after that, you amortize principal as if it was a 10-year loan. But then at the end of the third year, fourth year, you do a balloon payment and fully pay off the balance. So your planning is how do you do that at the end, and there are lots of ways to do it, but mezzanine loan is a very effective tool for making a business acquisition. And then you've got seller financing, which is another form of that, where they generally might take a security interest in the company, but they'll be behind your secured lenders. And when all is said and done, those are the main sources of money that are used in the purchase of the business. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. But there's also other ways of getting the money too. So, and I'll just give you one because there's so many. One of them is called a wraparound lien. Let's say you're already in a business and you already have your assets fully pledged to all the lenders that are providing you with your financing for the business now that you already have. But now you're going to buying another business, and you've got secured lenders. They're interested in you, okay, but you don't have quite enough collateral in the company that you're buying in order to fully satisfy them. And you can give them a wraparound lien not only on the assets within the company that you're buying, but on the assets of the company that you've already got that's already fully leveraged, which is enough in their mind of collateral to make the loan, where without that wraparound, they wouldn't do it. You got to get involved in this, folks, and you got to get involved with us, because whatever the situation that comes up, we will take you through so many solutions that we've perfected over the years for how we get these things, done. All right, another question here. I'm looking at strategic aggregation as a service with the goal of acquiring a business. The thought process: set up a JV with a business with no strategic aggregation system, leverage them, build the system, and exit for an amount, and or build it to buy in / buy them out of their main business. How would you structure the JV so that I make money running the system? Is this what you do? Wait a minute, I'm running out of space here. I apologize for this question stuff, but it's very tough sometimes to read these things here, because it's, oh, there it goes. Okay. How would you structure the JV so that I make money running the system? Is this what you meant when you said you would focus on strategic aggregation if you are not acquiring a business? Well, in a way it is, okay, but let me speak directly to what you're asking. Understanding strategic aggregation is there's an ability to take that knowledge and put it into a business. And the business is in working more as a consultant with other companies who, if they had this strategy, would become more profitable. And you would show them how it works, you would show them what you do, and you would convince them that if they'll work with you, you will implement this on their behalf. And then you've got to determine what your model is for how you're going to do that. I use strategic aggregation as one of the methods of acquiring a business where I do it as a function of one of our techniques, which is called a build-up buy-in, a build-up buy-in. How does that work? Let's say the only thing I've got is knowledge of strategic aggregation, but I know it cold. I'm a master of how to do it, okay? All right, so now I got a company that I would like to own a piece of and maybe own the whole thing. So I go to them and I offer to do this service for them where they don't pay me anything up front. They don't have to pay me a dime. But here's how we're going to work together. I'm going to either bring in companies that together will acquire, or I'm going to go and joint venture with other companies so that we'll take another company that fits the model and we'll just joint venture with them. We'll do certain things, they'll do certain things. And here's what that might look like. Again, let me go back to my example of the real estate broker. So I go to the owner of the real estate brokerage and say, I want to do a build-up buy-in with you. You don't pay me anything. I'll create new sales for you, new revenue sources for you. And all I want you to do is two things. One is pay me a share of the revenue that I create for you that you haven't paid anything for other than to pay me a share of it. So no upfront cost. And when I've done that, it's going to add value to your business. I want you to take whatever the value of your business is before I bring in that extra revenue and profit, and whatever the value of that business is after I bring in that revenue. And I want you to give me, and then it's some percentage equity in your business because I've increased its value substantially. And not every owner wants to do that. Okay, sometimes you'll run into a problem with the owner and says, well, I don't want anybody else owning a piece of my business. Okay, but you agree I'm entitled to the value, right? Oh yeah, you're entitled to the value. I just don't want anybody else owning my business or piece of my business. Well, great, so we're going to create phantom stock. So we're going to create it as if I were an owner. What would I own? What would I be entitled to in terms of ownership of your value and ownership of your profitability? So those will be shared with me on that percentage, which is a fraction of what I created for you. But I won't legally be an owner. I'm not entitled to any of the privileges of ownership except a distribution of money, and when you sell the business, my share of the value. Okay? And those deals can be made. There's a set of agreements that spell out how that's done. So now you've got a way to deliver that service, participate in the equity increase in the value of the business. When you make your deals with the other strategic partners, you make deals with them too. Okay, I'm going to bring you the ABC brokerage firm over here that sells residential real estate. They've got traffic of X number of people that they place in new homes. We're going to bring those people to you for your service. And when we do, here's what we want from you. So you're leveraging that out in every way. Now, let me explain to you something about strategic aggregation that's really important. If you only got two companies participating in that, the value is somewhat nominal, right? I mean, you're only going to get so many sales from this one. This one's only going to get so many sales for that one. You're going to have a revenue sharing mechanism, which, by the way, we have all automated and on a online platform. So we do this all the time. Okay, so there's going to be a revenue sharing arrangement, and each company is going to make a lot more money and increase their sales and increase their profits and increase the revenue streams that they're getting per their client because they're getting some of the other guy's business. Now, if you only have two, there's only a limited amount that happens. But what about when you have three? Three. Okay, what about when you have three? Well, that number just went up by another 50%. Okay, of now the cross traffic that you've got, because now you got three-way cross traffic, but then you get a fourth one. Now you got four-way cross traffic, and you can see where the client base and the sales of each of these businesses is growing logarithmically as you add new players in your strategic aggregation scheme of things. So once you get it up and running in two companies, now it gets real easy to add the third and the fourth because it's really exciting to everybody. They're not just going to get one company's leads for their business. They're going to get a whole bunch more. Okay. And so you eventually get it to where you can show, in fact, you can show right in the beginning, we're going to start out with you two, but look what's going to happen when we get 10 or 20 of the different companies that are now strategically aggregated with each other through either ownership or joint venture. It can be done either way. So these techniques are very, very exciting. There's nothing like them. They can produce so much more revenue, so much more profit than a standard business model. We believe here that that strategic aggregation is the definitive business model for the 21st century. And it's been fully facilitated by technology. In other words, if you had to do and keep track of all these cross sales and all the revenue sharing, and you had to do that manually, you'd run out of steam pretty quick. On the other hand, we put the whole thing on a platform, does it automatically. Once you have everybody plugged in, even the cross referrals of the people from one company to another is all automated. So the process is able to work where it's a very minimal expense for the people participating in it, and huge outcomes in terms of cash flow and profitability. Okay. How do you secure, how do you source your deals? Okay, I guess that's the same as, was a question that it was asked earlier, I think. Where do we get the our leads from on a business that's for sale? Okay, we get them from brokers. Okay, I just went through all that. Now, again, I'll only make this comment really quickly. If you go back 7 to 10 years, we didn't use brokers. And the reason is because they weren't very professional. They got in the way more than they helped to get a deal across. It was another agenda that has to get satisfied by the terms of the closing. And we lost deals because the broker wasn't professional, and we don't want to do that. Well, today, the majority of them are much more professional. Somehow they wised up, they got better at what they do, and we're glad for that. So today we do use brokers, and we use them very regularly. It is a big source for us. But on the other hand, we also have other ways that we do it. Well, we have a piece of software that we have it's a subscription. It has the ability to go into the internet and pull from the internet big data. And by that, what I mean is, let's say you own a business and you are thinking about selling your company, and you go on Google and you say, I want to sell my business. What's the market for a business like mine? You ask any question at all that implies that you are interested in selling a business, that's out there. It's part of big data. Okay. And this company has the resources to go find that piece of big data and bring it back to us with the information about the party who made that request. And they're able to supply us with the owner of the company, that person's name, the name of the company, the owner, their phone number, their email address, and any contact information that we want, they can supply us. So we have our search team monitor that constantly. And when we get somebody who's interested in selling a business or buying a business of a certain type, that tool is incredibly valuable, because through the big data research process and sorting, it will find companies that meet that basic criteria. We still got a little more work to do. We still got to contact them and all that, but that's what a team of people do. They send them emails. They don't respond to the emails. They make phone calls. They don't respond to the phone calls. We send them letters. And there's an automated process that we follow that eventually gets us in front of most of these people. And we already know they're interested in why we're contacting them, because that's what they were inquiring for on the internet. And so we're able to tailor our outreach to them to immediately hit that hot button that was the reason they were searching on the internet. So that's another way that we find these companies. And then there's elbow grease that we used to apply, but don't have to because of the tools, where we would just take companies that were registered in the field. We would find out, who the owner was through other sources, a lot of research work, and then we would send them a letter or an email and follow up with phone calls if we could find the email or the phone number of the company. Now, since they're commercial businesses, they don't hide most of the time. So it's not like a person who doesn't put their information out there to be contacted like that. These folks do. So that's one of the ways that we find these companies as well. And the beauty of PIBA, whether you're on the advice side or on the done for you side, is we pay for all these tools. They're very expensive, but because we do so much of this, we can afford them. It's a very small price for us to pay, given the value that they provide. So we want to know before we buy a company, what does the industry look like? What should their financial statement look like? That's why we use RMA annual statement studies. We want to know who is the owner of a business that's already inquired about this stuff, so we know we're reaching out to somebody who's already interested in what we have for them in the way of an acquisition. So again, they're expensive tools, but they pale in cost relative to the value when we have the volume of this that we do. So hopefully that's helpful to you. I'd also like to say to you, if you have any interest at all in the PIBA Gold program, you should contact us and get on the waiting list, because without doing that, if you went, because if you decide you want to do it, and then comes time when we call you, okay, your wait is up, and all of a sudden, I can't do this, or I don't want to do it yet. There's no penalty for that. But if you're not on the waiting list, it could be a long time after that before we get to you, when you finally decide you do want to do it. So those are my thoughts to share with you. Hopefully they have been beneficial. I have tried to give you as best I can an orientation to how the world works. That was what the front part of this was, where the money is out there that's gettable. There's other things you can do from no matter where you are in life. You can be one of the top people in the country when it comes to wealth creation, because it's not fundamentally dependent upon your own income. Now, maybe you can't afford to do the commitment fee on a PIBA Gold right now, but there's almost nothing that is unreachable about Bizar Financing Pro, so that you can have all the knowledge and advisor line and assistance that you need to do this. We built our company so that at every layer of your capability and desire, we have a right system affordable for you to be able to get in there and get this done for yourself. And we look forward to the opportunity to work with you on that. Hopefully, again, this has been helpful. Again, I tried to share with you the mindset, the knowledge of the what's to do, how they're done, samples of businesses that have done this, that do it, so you can see almost in a case study how it's put together, how it's done, where the money comes from, where the companies come from. Everything you need now, you should have a really good perspective that this is doable, it's out there, there's nothing about it that you can't do, but it does require a little bit of an investment in yourself and a commitment to getting it done, and the right mindset. If you have those things, the world is your oyster out there, and we'd be privileged to be a part of your journey in getting this done. So I'd like to thank you for being present here today and for your good questions. And I look forward to seeing you in one of our programs in the near future. Until then, I wish you all the best of success.